Go ahead, Murray.
It's like, explain it to them like.
Don't encourage people.
What's your problem?
He's a nice guy.
Don't
He is.
encourage cooperation.
Nice guy. Why, do you want to stay divisive and?
Resist. He's on the resist mode.
You're a crook.
No, I've never talked to the TV as much. That must be good. How it works, right? They can throw it back to
No, I was a little bit.
Watch the Chuck Schumer program.
Not me. I have no television. I'm insulated from all of that.
Hey,
I have no TV. Haven't had a TV in 44 years.
The only person I know that doesn't have a TV.
What town?
oh God, I wish I was in his shoes.
My bargaining team, it's so nice to see everyone reassemble.
Well, thanks, you.
I thought maybe the big sheets there might help in terms of.
We'll call the Water Pollution Control Authority and regular town council meeting to order for Tuesday, January 8th, 2019 at 7:02 p.m. We'll start first with salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Judy.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni.
Here.
Counselor Candelora. Counselor Diamond.
Here.
Counselor Fawnin.
Here.
Counselor Miller.
Here.
Counselor Rose.
Here.
Counselor Viglione.
Here.
Counselor Zampiano.
Here. Motion to approve the minutes of December 18th, 2018 Town Council meeting.
So moved. Second.
Any corrections? Seeing none, roll call?
Mayor Judy.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni.
Yes.
Counselor Diamond.
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin.
Yes.
Counselor Miller.
Yes.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Counselor Viglione.
Abstain.
Counselor Zampiano.
Abstain.
We'll move into the Water Pollution Control Authority agenda, correspondence, citizen statements. Seeing none, we'll move on to unfinished business, there's nothing listed. New business, there's nothing listed. Citizen statements and petitions under Water Pollution Control Authority. Seeing none, we'll move into the regular town council agenda. Reports of committees, boards, and commissions. Economic Development Commission.
They met last night, and in our packet, there is the review from Roger Solway. I did not attend the meeting, so I'm not sure if they discussed anything else.
Yeah, I was at the meeting, but unfortunately I had to leave at 7 for the Permanent Project Building Committee, but they spent a lot of time with Carrie Duquesne going through the Plan of Conservation Development comments and process going forward. So they're very much involved in their section of economic development and getting that. And as Deputy Mayor had mentioned, the Roger Solway's report is in there as well.
Thank you. Park and Recreation.
No meeting.
Police Commission.
Next meeting is next Tuesday, January 15th.
Fire Commission.
Fire Commission, there was a meeting last Thursday, and some of the things that were talked about were the OSHA hose and ladder testing was completed on December 6th. Aerial ladder testing was to be done on January 7th at Station 1. I don't know if that was completed or not. OSHA SCUBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, regulator flow testing will be done on January 21st and 22nd at each station. Brush truck number 1 has been repaired and is back in service. And the last thing is Station 1 generator is almost finished with its installation. That's it.
Thank you. Board of Education and Town Council Communications Subcommittee.
There was no meeting, but we would I talked to the board chair, Shauna Holzer, and we're looking to have a meeting on January 22nd at 6 PM and be prior to the council meeting in the town manager conference room. So I'm not sure who's all on that committee. I know I am, and I believe Joe is. I thought Anthony was our other candidate, but I'm not sure.
Anthony was on it at one time.
Right, but I'm not.
I don't know what his status is.
Right. But, I mean, other council members can attend also. It's just a subcommittee meeting. Anyway, it'll be posted. And some of the things that will be on the agenda is their budget, because they will get their budget at their meeting on the 17th. So start discussing their budget, the high school renovate as new RFP, and the camera, STW TVS camera, the bid for that. Those are three things that we had talked about.
Thank you. Town Planning Goals Subcommittee,
No meeting.
Public Safety Communications
No
Committee,
meeting.
Planning and Zoning Commission.
Planning and zoning, at last week's meeting, they approved the farm brewery over at the DeFrancesco property. And they spent a lot of time talking about the plan of conservation and development.
Have they taken any action yet on the marijuana dispensaries?
You know, I don't know,
No.
do you, George? I don't think so.
I believe that
Still
was
talking about it.
continued.
That's
I
continued, okay,
believe the public hearing is still continuing.
okay.
All right, move into the town manager's report. New part-time clerk in the town clerk's office, Ian Henry.
Yeah, just a brief FYI, I wanted to bring that to your attention. She started on Monday, or yesterday, and it's a great help to Lisa in the clerk's office, been working without that position for a while. And I think it's gonna work out well. She comes well credentialed and is local with respect to coming from Durham, so experience in 2 other municipalities, so I think it should work out fine.
Next item is USDA grant application, Sunflower Project.
Yeah, just more of communication FYI, wanted to let you know we're working on 2 applications, sunflowers and the advanced manufacturing study. We've got some good feedback from USDA, or we did prior to the shutdown. We're just waiting for them to come back online, back to the offices. They'll help us and guide us through the process, and they're 2 separate parallel processes that don't conflict with one another, and there's no local match for either of the grants, and they don't compete against one another. So the intern's been very helpful working with Roger and myself, and I think we'll be able to put together 2 strong applications and see what we can get.
Thank you. Finally is an update on the propane case.
Yeah, I just wanted to put that in your packet, actually, I do have a note here, that we heard today, that the other side did file, petition was filed, so the town will have 10 days to respond, but our attorney, Barbara, has requested an extension, so that probably won't be until the 28th of January, and then it could take a few weeks from that point going forward. But that's the update for that, and you have the decision there. So now we know that there's a petition filed for
Is that an appeal?
An appeal, yeah.
Next is community events and presentations. Nothing listed. Citizen statements and petitions and correspondence. Resignations and appointments. Appointment of Melissa Pedrolello, Republican, to the Economic Development Commission as an alternate business community member, term to expire 12/31/21.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
The information included her resume, and that was all fine, but it did not give an address. So there's nothing in here that says that this person is a resident of the town of North Branford, which
She lives in Northford. I'm not exactly sure the address, but I remember seeing an email from the chair of the RTC saying she lived in Northford. And I don't have the exact address.
Roll call.
Mayor Duty,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Yes.
Counselor Diamond,
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Counselor Viglione,
Yes.
Counselor Zampiano.
Yes. Next is appointment of Frank Bergantino to the Conservation and Inland Wetlands Watercourses Agency as a regular member, term to expire 12/31/2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Yes.
Counselor Diamond,
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
No.
Counselor Viglione,
Yes.
Counselor Zampiano.
Yes. Next is reappointment of Jan Fitch to the Economic Development Commission as a regular member, term to expire 12/31/21.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Why on
Roll call.
some of the, excuse me, just, on some of the appointments, there'll be, some information about the person and others not?
If it's a new member, that we
Okay,
kind of get a,
okay. No, I know her, I was just waiting for the time I could ask, I meant to ask the last person.
yeah, if it's
I
somebody
didn't know
new,
either.
somebody new coming on the board or commission, we try to fill the rest of the council
Okay.
in as to their background.
Okay,
But if it's a reappointment,
okay.
next is reappointment of Thomas Bailey.
We didn't get the vote on Jan Fitch.
Sorry.
Okay, Mayor Duty,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Yes.
Counselor Diamond,
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Counselor Viglione,
Yes.
Counselor Zampiano.
Yes.
Next is reappointment of Thomas Bailey to the Permanent Project Building Committee as a regular member, building and construction, term to expire 11/30/2022.
So moved. I'm not sure on that date though, let me just check on. Terms of 5 years, yes, it's a 5-year term, so that's correct.
I'll second the nomination.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Yes.
Counselor Diamond,
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Counselor Viglione,
Yes.
Counselor Zampiano.
Yes.
Next item is reappointment of Carl A. Ford III to the Ethics Commission as a regular member, term to expire 12/31/21.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Yes.
Counselor Diamond,
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Counselor Viglione,
Yes.
and Counselor Zampiano.
Yes.
Next item is unfinished business discussion and action, future budget planning initiative, fire pension.
Yeah, so I put together a history, it's in the packet under memo there, for fire pension, with 9 corresponding minutes, if you will, covering both the pension committee and the town council as far back as 1991. So I tried to lay out the history there and how we got there with additional information on what the multiplier history is. Anthony had also submitted a memo to go through the numbers there, so I hope that's a a helpful starting point. And I will reiterate that we have confirmed Becky Seelman for the meeting on the 22nd, so she will be here to walk us through the liability and options. But I hope this is a good starting point for the history of the plan.
Next is update on North Branford Police Department renovation project.
Yeah, I didn't put anything in the packet, but I did submit and put some information at your desk, in front of you, because the permanent project meeting was held last night. Was about I think an hour and a half long meeting. Everyone was present, including the appointments that the council made, and Councilor Diamond, Councilor Miller, and Councilor Rose. So I thought it was a productive meeting, and essentially I typed out the motion, the recommendation that they had, that they're sending to the council, looking for the council to approve additional funding for Silver Petroselli to go through the process of coming up with a plan, if you will, for the town center or municipal campus, if you will, including the police department, ambulance building, town hall, and any other amenities. The architect had inquired and asked that the council come up with any other amenities, like either a community center, town green, whatever the council felt was appropriate to look at in that. And of course, Councilor Rose can speak to the other elements of the meeting, but I thought the group was engaged, and we went around. There's a lot of things to talk about, and I think there'll be a parallel process where the council will look at this recommendation tonight, and whether or not you want to go in the direction of a town center and spending extra money with Silver Petroselli to do that. But ultimately, it'll come back to the Permanent Project Building Committee to look at whether or not the police department will be a one-story or a two-story. Where it would be located, and also whether or not the ambulance service and Company 4 would be factored into it. And the members of the permanent project indicated that it would be a strong recommendation as well to invite the fire chief and the fire commission to be part of that discussion, which I thought was important and a good point. So there was a lot of good discussion, but ultimately the recommendation was to come back for more funding for Silver Petroselli to do the town center study.
And what that motion did was triggered that they were gonna have to us for our next meeting, proposals on what that would cost. And we weren't trying to get into a whole bunch of detail. We were looking at, and everybody had a whole bunch of ideas, so, what could they do to create a small green and have a town center there, and we discussed it as like a 50-year plan. But, so even though it says here, to fund it, George and Marie were there, we're well aware that they have to come in with a cost for doing this, and that'll be at our next meeting. And then, we did talk about the, the single story, two-story, the ADA requirements of a two-story over the single story. So I think, the building committee's gonna have a lot of work working through all that, and then we'll make a recommendation over, whether it's two stories or one story. And then two, where it actually goes, but we're hoping that with our little town center design, that'll help us to decide where it might go.
Something that's long overdue.
Seems to me that we really need to look at the totality of the property over there and make some determination, or best guess, of how much of that property we would care to devote to this whole enterprise. There's a lot questioning from the architect on where the police department might be cited, but when you start talking about the rest of these, and I've got some issues on the police department plans anyway, but when you start looking at the rest of these buildings, I think we need to have a fuller vision of not just what we would care to bring there, but how we would like to see that sitting in the area, how much of the property we want to do. And of course, nobody's talking about relocating Public Works, so that has to be figured in as part of the area. And we destroy, the recreational fields at the same time, so we have to talk about relocating those as well. This is turning into a terrifically large project, and I don't want to lose sight of the need for some relief for the police department, but I think we're missing something here.
Well, I think, George, most of what you just said would be answered in what they come back with for our next meeting with their proposal. They were gonna look at, actually seeing if, I talked with the site engineer last night after the meeting, and he had some ideas already for, coming in there with like a little U-type road that would create the green and then have the buildings around it. And, and so as well as all your concerns, you've got the concerns of the Potato Festival. And I thought a lot about that today, and that is a big piece of land, and if you took too much of that field for it, there's land on the other side of the river, and that's a one weekend a year thing. So I think, I wouldn't count, I personally wouldn't count it out, and I wouldn't not make the, part of paying $6 million for that piece of property or whatever it was that, it was, for the town to use. So I'm not sure that one weekend a year is, we're getting our bang out of $6 million.
I'm not talking about that, Al. I'm talking about having some idea of how much land we're talking. Are we talking about 80 acres?
Right, so
that we would want to do? I mean, give them some boundaries.
They're gonna come in with
Or they're not going to use any boundaries.
Right. So they were gonna look at they were gonna talk to Michael and the other heads of departments that may or may not move there. Then they would know how many buildings we would put up there if it was a town campus, and that would determine how much land we would need. And then they'd have an option with a small town green. So, I mean, I don't think that we should say, okay, we're willing to use 10 acres, or we're willing to use 12 acres. I think we should let them, we should figure out what buildings would we want to move there. And then the other thing that came up was putting a community center there. And, I get around to a lot of different town halls and town campuses, and, community centers aren't a real expensive building. Most of them are a metal building that has a gym. Some of them have a pool and a meeting room and all that, and they're kind of at the back of the town campus, so they might have a nice facade on the front of it, but they're, how long and how much money do we put into Stanley T. Williams as a community center? That's an old building. That's gonna need a lot of help, and maybe that's the way we stay. We typically don't do anything in town, but I think that, and I'll take the blame for starting this concept of saying, hey, let's try and get a plan without spending a whole bunch of money on, so we don't plop the police station right in the middle of our future town green. So I think that when we get the cost for the study of a small town green up there, town center, that will determine how many acres that we would need, and then we decide, oh, it's gonna be 50 acres, we're not doing that. Or, oh, this will fit on 10 or 12 acres, and it might make sense. So, I mean, your point's well taken, but I think at least I'm on the same page as you. Maybe I didn't convince you of that.
I just think it's the idea, I think what you're saying is it's a concept, and it's gonna take years and years to do the whole thing, but what you're saying is true. If it's gonna happen, you wanna know where the police station is best located,
Well,
and
that-
for that concept.
That was our problem last meeting. Everybody said they saw something, they saw a map, they saw a plan. You know, if we get a concept that's in writing, we could file it in the town clerk's office, we could put a picture on the wall or something, and then you have your concept. You don't lose it again. So,
Yeah, and to Counselor Miller's point, I mean, I had, you know, had Carrie put together and just blow up this, because it was one of the questions that came up at the meeting last night was, you know, what's in play and what's not. And so I think there's two givens, that the Public Works Department isn't gonna move and Wall Field isn't gonna move. And then there was a question of, well, maybe the demarc is also, we're not touching the Auger Barns or the Auger House. So that's where the map kind of starts up here and runs as, you know, as far down as we could get on the map here. There's quite a bit of real estate, but again, it's not just buildings, it's fields and athletic fields. So, because one of the, site one is the softball field. Site two is in front of the POCO Festival grounds, and site three is across the street. I'm not sure I think we're probably gonna focus on one side of the street where Public Works is in Wall Field and where the current police station is, but I think we have to give, I think the council should give the Bill Silver through me to give them some sort of, you know, point, or you say everything on the back half of the Auger property is in play as well. There's more land out there than we have on the front side. So, but the access to that is a little tricky. I mean, it's not it's a secondary road to get off the back side. But I think for getting started on this side, you have to think about what's permanent and what's movable, and what dimensions do you want them to work in.
Well,
And
that was my point on the dimensions.
Yeah.
Because, if you look at Madison, for example, they used a long access road, and they have everything off the road.
They bought a school.
Say again?
They bought a private school.
Yeah, but they're way back. Does that make sense for us? I'm not saying it does, but Bill Silver's ideas should be, at least informed by the amount of space that we might want to use, or might, what we would deem not
Well, I think,
to not use.
like last night, and, a lot of the building committee members, or at least two of them were really pro moving the ambulance down there. I personally have no idea whether that's a good idea, a bad idea, where the idea came from. But I think that would be where Michael would talk to the people in charge and see, or, does it make sense to move it down here? And I know, I guess a lot of the calls are 70, 80, 90% of the calls are kind of way down at this end of the town, so maybe it makes sense to move it a little closer. And then, then you'd look at it and say, okay, and now do we have this property where it is existing, for sale as a business opportunity? But, so those things have to be answered before, so, okay, in this town campus or in this new police station, is the ambulance building gonna be part of it? And so, I don't know that answer, and I don't think you guys know the answer, but that's part of this little pre-study. Michael's supposed to get back to him with, we want this, 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 and this looked at. So, that's what we have to come up with. And if we want an answer from, or a proposal from them in 2 weeks, I don't know what you need from us, Michael, for tonight, or whether you just talk to your department heads that might be involved on moving something there.
Right, I see it as talking with Bill Silver and saying that unless the council were to say tonight, this is a terrible idea, we're not moving forward, I would tell them that, go ahead, get a proposal ready for the council meeting on the 22nd, and the other question is whether or not his proposal would include using, an engineering firm for a survey, and if the council wanted a survey or not, so that he could probably break it up and give us what it would cost us to do his portion of the concept, and then if it needed and thought should be surveyed. But then bring that back for the 22nd to see what the price tag is, and if the council's willing to spend that kind of money to engage him to do that. And then I think the Permanent Project Building Committee can still continue on with this, wrestling with their other issues of two-story, one-story, and other, square footage, and then maybe also entertain, police, fire commission in terms of whether or not ambulance should be part of it or stand alone. I think are there economies of scale that make more sense to do it now together, where you can share space, or should it be part of the map that says you do this one first, then this one, and then, ambulance, then town hall, and a community center, and whatever else the council is going to add with respect to buildings and other amenities. If you want the town green, and you want, something else in there, or where do you, and then, where do we put the ball fields and so forth, but, I think we can get them
I also
going.
agree with what Al said before, is that you also have to take into consideration the current buildings like Stanley T and cost up what that total is gonna be in the next couple of years. Then you have to look at our present buildings and what the overall cost is going to be to fix some of them, like the roof at Stanley T. I think that's important to include that in the discussion.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. I can do that, and I can talk to Bill tomorrow. And, but is there anything else the council has with respect to, maybe some sort of perimeter road coming around to get the green, and at this point, it's police, ambulance, town hall, and a community centers, unless there's something else.
Well, according to the map, you have a wide variety, and you have some serious road frontage on that whole piece,
Yeah.
to draw a road in anywhere you want down there. You could draw it in south of, the Red House down the street there, or you could draw it in close to Jurors Lane. I mean, that's all town property all the way through there, and wrap that road around the back there. I mean, I wouldn't think of a small, road going back there. You could have something fairly decent sized going back there that'll service a lot of buildings or whatever else you desire to put back there. I'd like to see some of the wetlands flagged, if there's any wetlands back there. I know there's some towards the field, way in back, but. I mean, that's what I think the architect would come up with, what type of road? Would the road wrap around, Wall Field? Come down the Public Works entrance where it is now, and then wrap around the front of that or the back of that? Come in where the fire training academy is? Or go behind that?
Yeah, and I think, just to point out, I think we all agree that we want the buildings to be in the, if at all possible, to be in the Wallingford Electric utility side, and move the fields. And I think, you look at this, the Wall Field is laid out with the new amenities there that you'd want to cluster if you had to, and if you, more than likely, if you're gonna use this space up here, you're gonna have to relocate one of the fields, you're gonna wanna cluster it here to take use of the concessions and bathrooms, what have you. But again, that's further discussions internally with Fran and Rec Commission. But it can be done. And I think it's just gonna be a master plan that looks at pieces that the council will decide that they want to approve, and maybe it's, you know, the 40, 50-year plan, and you say, okay, phase one is the police department with a price tag of X, and then you, if you down the road have the money to do the next, whatever you prioritize as the next building on the campus, that you, if you like the campus concept.
So if we get a 30-year plan together, at least we'll get it before Fran retires.
Who said he was retiring?
It's Franny's idea. Where's the line for the Wallingford Electric?
I believe it to be right at the,
Is it a straight line, or?
I don't think so. I think it's right
Or we
here,
could set the line.
or through the football field, somewhere there.
Well, the Wallingford Electric goes to Wallfield.
It does.
Yeah. Comes off of, the pole. I'm the last, building at Wallingford. So it comes off one of the poles.
So that was what.
So the existing police department is UI.
Right, but see, if I was building that today, I would build my service on a pedestal over in the right area.
And just feed it.
And I would go underground across my own property and go wherever I want on the property. And my meter and everything is in the right district. And I don't think this.
That's how Wallfield works.
Right, okay, so I think we definitely wanna do that, you know, when we go forward here, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know?
So Wallingford Power goes all the way to, the concession stand and bathrooms.
So that's all there, yeah. So you have a meter somewhere else?
We have a meter on the outbuilding, we have a transformer right there.
Okay.
That's ours.
So yeah, you do something like that, and then just go underground to our new buildings. Or future new buildings.
Anything else?
Lauren, can you put on your agenda for your next Park and Rec Commission meeting, since there's discussion about the softball field and that possibly becoming something? Because of Memorial Field being renovated and it now has lights and is a softball field and is home to the high school softball games, where that field no longer is because they moved it back to the campuses, what, if anything, if we eliminated that softball field, because we put another one back online with lights and everything, just usage and just to get some information in regards to that.
And I can also pull the permits from the last couple years.
Okay.
This is
Just so they can start, Park and Rec can start, the commission can start talking about that.
And just another note, that field there would be, you'll be replacing that field the way it's built now. That's 300 feet.
Which
And
field,
then
the one that's there?
yeah.
So the fence could come in and everything.
Wasn't
could
that
come in.
really built as a men's softball field,
Yeah.
like a men's league field?
Right.
And now that doesn't exist anymore?
The men's league, I don't think so, right?
Hasn't
So,
existed for
so you're not
10 years.
replacing the 300
They all go
field.
over to the sportsplex and play real softball.
So
It-
it'd be like a little field.
Right, and
If you were to replace.
Legally.
is there a possibility that the lights on that field could be moved to Wall Field? To the other field, you know, like, you see where it's kinda laid out where Little League, I know, ideally would like a second field put in. And I know, isn't there, the conduits are there for lights if we wanted to put lights in? So,
The conduits are all.
so would that be a possibility of moving the existing
Yeah,
lights?
I don't know what the cost would be versus if you
Put new
ones
ones?
up, that's
Okay.
more efficient, but yes, the lights are there, so yeah.
Okay.
That's it. Anybody else? Next is a review of proposed road ordinance.
Good evening. As a follow-up to discussions at the last town council meeting with Attorney Marino, he has drafted some revisions or some additions to the proposed ordinance covering maintenance of sidewalks and the cost of who's to do that. they're included in the email that is attached to the item. And basically, there's two new items, sections 201-25, maintenance of sidewalks, and 201-26, which covers which basically, the first one basically puts the onus or the responsibility on the abutter to repair and maintain the sidewalk. And the next item, 201-26, basically says if they don't maintain it, then the town can have the work done and lien the property for the cost of that work. Those are the only two new sections. What Attorney Marino is also proposing is everything be put in the sidewalks, just a sort of revision to Article 3. The snow and ice, all the other following items in that section were already in the proposed ordinance. I just have to change the numbers in the final version. But this section, Article 3, specifically addresses the sidewalks, and that's what Attorney Marino thought was the best way to put it there. He felt it responded to his concern about transparency. It's all up front in that. And also included in the packet, there's some historical information. There's a research report. It's a little bit dated, but it talks about what other towns do in terms of whether the town is responsible for the sidewalk or the abutters. And it varies by town.
I have a question. If it says that it's the person abutting, they've caused the damage to the sidewalk, they're responsible. What if somebody else damaged the sidewalk? Are they still responsible?
Well,
In other words, let's say some big truck comes off the road and crushes the sidewalk or something, and they didn't do it, who's responsible then to repair the
I mean,
sidewalk?
the way I read it, the abutter is responsible.
Even if they didn't cause
I mean,
it? It
I
says in
think-
here
I think-
that they caused the damage.
Right. But we'd have to take, I would think that would be on a sort of case.
Well, I just was,
On the basis, if something happened, if an ambulance, or, a fire truck ran over it, maybe we treat that a little bit different. They had to respond to something.
The truck went off the road, that would be an accident.
Yeah.
And their insurance
And
company
then,
would be responsible.
in theory, we go after their insurance. Again, these are suggestions from Attorney Marino. If there's concurrence with it at this point, or we can talk about it more, or I can incorporate this in the ordinance and bring it back at the next meeting, then we can schedule a public hearing to see what the public has, any thoughts on it. But we can't schedule a public hearing tonight till I sort of put this in that final format with the rest of
I guess
the
the
ordinance.
one question that jumps out at me, and unfortunately Vin's not here, and I don't wanna put his fill in on the spot, but
Courtney?
concern I've got about this proposed change you made indicates the town has the right to make the repair if the property owner doesn't. And if we're true to form and we do nothing for an extended period of time, is there the potential for liability, not only of the property owner, but also for the town, because the town had the ability to repair it and did not?
Yeah.
So, and I'm not sure if you considered that question. I'd kinda like to know if you had given that some
All
thought.
right. Again, there's not a critical element in this. I just like to get it moving forward. And we can have that discussion at the next meeting if you like, when Attorney Marino's present, because that's right.
That's fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Next is update on 944 Totoga Road remediation.
Just quickly on that, I've talked to the engineer and they're scheduling the survey. They hope to be doing it this week. And so things seem to be moving in a direction where the property owner is trying to address the issues and the concerns and move it forward. So hopefully it continues, and we'll keep reporting on that.
Thank you. Move into new business, discussion and action, personnel rules and regulations of the merit system.
Yeah, and as I said, we'd have Courtney here tonight, and she is actually here to serve in two roles. We're filling in for Vin, but also to go through the rules and regulations of the merit system, what we've been working on, and I'll let her walk us through what we need to do.
So, we reviewed the recommendation of the auditors that, updates be made to the, existing personnel rules and regulations manual, and it kind of raises two separate areas. One is, to update with respect to workplace, laws and regulations that may apply, whether those are federal or state, and we certainly recommend that, the town do that. And continue updating those policies and produce arguably a sort of a standard employee handbook that would sort of set forth the current state of the law and also provide best practices and guidance applicable to all town employees subject to any collective bargaining requirements. The second area that's raised, though, by the recommendation goes to the merit system, because the town charter includes a merit system provision. And with respect to that, it raises the question as to whether or not the town wants to continue with a formal merit system as opposed to policies that comply with and advance the town's commitment to merit practices, but not necessarily pursuing a formal merit system procedure. And the reason that we raise this for the town's consideration is that at this time, most town employees are subject to collective bargaining agreements. The merit system, as set forth in the charter, has specific exclusions, and the town employees who are not covered sort of by collective bargaining agreements, who would be part of the classified service, are arguably your department heads primarily, and that is a fairly limited number of employees. And a merit system, a formal merit system, as opposed to a set of policies which embrace merit principles, can be very expensive to update and maintain, and also expensive to implement when it's being followed. And for example, a merit system ordinarily involves competitive exams and promotional procedures, which you have to be invested in addition to making sure that the policies and practices are up to date at all times. So the real question with respect to any update of that particular piece, the merit system piece, as opposed to the workplace rules and regulations piece, really involves a question for the town as to whether or not it wants to continue with that formal process, which is provided for in the charter, but arguably requires review and updating. And if the town did not wish to continue with a formal merit system, I think that the recommendation involves reviewing and possibly revising the town charter to reflect that.
What's the good and bad?
Well, the good and the bad is this, is that with respect to updating, sort of creating a handbook of general application, which would sort of, since there hasn't been an update since 1986, make sure that the town is up to date and is following and has sort of in its policies the most up-to-date workplace laws and regulations compliance. That's something which can be done. Both of these are processes which require time and drafting. And so if the town wanted us to do that, we could provide an estimate of the type of work that would be involved in that. But that's something that could be done more readily. With respect to an update to the merit system, if the town does not want to continue with a formal procedure, that would involve a review of the charter, and that is a more complex process.
So what do we, gotta help me out here, what's our merit system now, and where do we use it?
So the merit system, you have a provision in your charter which establishes a merit system and a classified service, and that's in Article 9. And it, essentially provides for things like position descriptions and a pay schedule, and also requires the implementation of a handbook and set of policies that would govern the classified service and would provide for things like competitive examinations and promotional systems. In many cases, those elements, things like duties and responsibilities of positions, pay scales, even promotional opportunities are covered by collective bargaining agreements that are negotiated with the town's bargaining units. So you already have systems in place in terms of your collective bargaining agreements, which cover many things that would otherwise be, you know, the duties and responsibilities, the qualifications for the position, and the pay scales. So it really raises the question of whether or not the town wishes to continue to pursue having this model in the charter, when a majority of town personnel are covered by bargaining units, and those who aren't, it really raises the question of whether the town wants to commit to these types of procedures for all non-union personnel.
So with our non-union personnel, and I know earlier on, you know, some years back, we had a town manager who used them, like, we'd give him like a lump sum of money and he would give raises according to how he felt things went on. Things, you know, who did their job well, who needed help. So we can still do that?
So arguably, if you are following a classified service provision, you would have a pay system and structure in place that you would be following in order to set wages, compensation, and bonuses and that type of thing for non-union personnel. So it would be less discretionary and more formal in terms of how it was applied. So I think the sort of the emphasis I would give it is this, is that, you know, clearly the town has a commitment to merit-based employment. It has a commitment to equal opportunity and to non-discrimination. And those types of policy commitments can be accomplished by adopting things like an equal employment opportunity policy and a non-discrimination policy, and ensuring that there are policies in place which describe the town's commitment to compliance with anti-discrimination laws and federal and state leave laws and these types of things, which can be brought forward in an up-to-date personnel manual and don't necessarily have to be part of kind of a formal classified service program, which is really intended to provide, you know, very fixed procedures for how you basically post employment opportunities, hire those opportunities, and then promote within those opportunities. And it can be expensive and frankly burdensome to commit to all of those procedures, not least because competitive exams, if they're offered, are really something that can't be done on an ad hoc basis. They should be, you know, sort of.
So who would be
vetted.
taking, like right now the way we are, who would be taking, if we had these exams, who would have to take them? I mean, certainly not the union employees.
Right, the union employees are not taking competitive exams.
Well, they have, in terms of the entry-level position, like, let's just say, secretary one.
For hiring.
Yeah, for hiring.
For hiring.
Yeah.
But for promotion, it's governed by the
It's
contract.
governed by the contract.
So how about so if we had nothing, could the town manager still, I mean, you're not saying that because you're a town employee, everybody gets the same raise? The non-union?
No.
Is that law or not law?
No, I mean,
Okay.
it would depend upon, you know, what you formally adopt. But no, if you have it's different if you are a union employee versus if you are a non-union employee. If you
Mhm.
are a union employee, your pay rate and your increases
all-
are governed by the contract.
Right.
And those are negotiated. If you are a non-union employee, your compensation and your increases, if any, are determined based on what the position is advertised for and any increases that are awarded through your procedure, which would be the town manager making recommendations and then
So
implementing
then the
those.
town manager would have discretion, he could give everybody a different raise if he wanted to.
I think he could make recommendations, because he would, I mean, you could still have a situation where he is making recommendations as to what increases should be awarded based on the position and the performance of the individual.
Mike,
So you have
how
more
many
flexibility.
employees would fall into this category?
For the,
The non-union.
non-union department, I think it's
18?
18.
So how is it managed today?
Well, we're using like this hybrid, if you will, or it's managed by a group through the council. It's like we negotiate with them and they get an increase as proposed by the council.
You
I'm
negotiate-
not doing anything in separately in terms of, other than, the last tool that I inherited was, or from the last town manager, the, weeks of vacation. I'm sorry, not vacation, administrative days. And that's the only discretionary piece that I have with department heads, and nothing to do with saying, okay, this department head will get an increase and separating them out. They've always been, since I've been here, going as a group.
But that's really wrong, or at least the way I see it.
They kinda got away from that a few years back.
I know they got away from it, but if you really think of it, we all know and we all have worked next to people that really work their butt off, and we all have worked next to people that are so lazy that they shouldn't get the compensation because as a town council, we feel, wow, we have 12 really good employees out of the 18, so we'll give the other 6 a raise too. So whatever you're proposing here, because I'm not quite sure what you're saying,
Right.
I'm just saying, I don't want to get away from the town manager or the town council having the right to go back to a merit-based raises for our non-union employees. But that's just me.
Right, so fundamentally what I'm saying is there's a difference, I think there's a difference between adopting merit as a principle, which I think the town has a commitment to merit as a principle, that people should be hired based on qualifications, that there should not be discrimination, that people should be compensated in accordance with the duties and responsibilities of the role, and also based on performance, subject to any statutory obligations that you may have, such as collective bargaining, where those, pay rates and pay increases are governed by the contract. If any policy or procedure that you adopt then becomes something that you have to adhere to. So the point here in terms of the recommendation is that on the one hand, I think that there are policies that the town can adopt, such as equal employment, anti-discrimination. You can outline a structure for making recommendations about non-union compensation that is focused on merit without having a formal merit system, because a formal merit system is one where the town is committing to having, entrance exams, competitive promotional exams, and, posting positions, and also following a very fixed structure in terms of how people are hired, promoted, and advanced.
But
And
to move away from a formal merit system requires a charter change.
You would have to revisit the charter. I think there is some flexibility in the charter language, because it basically talks about a commitment to merit, and things like having, position descriptions and a pay plan for positions that are not in the union is something that the town can do, but doesn't necessarily have to be in a formalized structure which includes promotional exams. There is language which talks about having a set of personnel rules which shall provide, among other things, and then it enumerates different practices that are contemplated. I think whether or not the town wants to continue with a commitment to promotional exams, for example, is something that should be revisited. So I think there is a way to continue with the town's commitment to merit without necessarily having a full-blown formal merit-based system. But either way, if there is going to be an update which involves a formal merit program, then that is an investment of time and resources to properly update that. And if there is an interest in moving towards a more flexible system, because the time and the expense of updating, maintaining, and implementing a formal merit system may not be worth it, given the number of employees that are actually governed by it, then that will involve some review of the charter.
I guess based on what you've just said, I would be more in favor of a flexible merit plan that still meets, we're within the guidelines of the charter. Because if we had to do a charter revision, we all know what that will encompass and entail. And it's not just that one piece of the charter, you know, the whole charter becomes open. And if we can do it and be more flexible but maintain the flexibility of a merit system, because I think that's what Al was talking about, is still have that flexibility.
Is that a third position, Rose?
What?
What you just said? I thought we were given an either or.
I thought
No, I
it was
think that's
a flexible a flexible.
To have a flexible system is what I was hearing, is to have a flexible system, move away from a merit system, requires a change in the charter. That's what I thought I was hearing.
Oh,
What?
I thought she said we could.
She said, I believe you said there might be some
Room.
flexibility in.
I think there should be review and there may be some flexibility.
So now I have a question. Why, and maybe I missed a meeting or might have been sleeping or something, why did this,
It's been a recommendation in
why did
the
this get on the
auditors.
agenda?
It came out from the, it's something on
It's been on the auditors
report as a note.
for
That-
several auditors
What, that
report.
we were doing something wrong?
No, it's just noted that it had not been touched or looked at or updated
Since
since
1986.
1986. And that they strongly recommended that the town do that. And so I started a year ago, began pulling it apart and was working on a revised, I took that old document that I gave you from '86 and pulled it apart and did 40 pages of cut and paste and adding in.
So this was the last
policies.
audit or all audits?
The last
Well,
several
they
audits.
picked it, Seward and
Last several
Monday, I
audits
think
with the
was the one
same
that,
family, same auditor?
they kept the note going forward.
Even the previous auditors had it on it.
Oh, did they?
Laverne, Levitsky and Verdi. It'll be interesting to see if the new auditors still have it on there. We should be getting that report soon, correct? Okay.
Come in the second meeting in February, give it to the council.
Yeah, so we've gone down, that's why I workplace violence, affirmative action, that the whole host of FMLA and putting it all together, but that when consulting with Courtney, it's a little bit more, she pointed out that we've got the merit system and what it means in a formal plan and the resources necessary to do that, then I think that I said we need to hit the pause button and go through so the council understands that which way you wanna go, and I think the having flexibility, I called it a hybrid, but a flexibility is a better term, I think, to have to go forward.
So what happens if we do nothing? Do we get, I mean, we're operating fine, do we get demerits on our audit, or?
No, it's just a note that keeps on popping up.
Okay.
I don't think there is a
It's just a note on,
there's
it's
no
just a note on
penalty.
your report card.
Right.
No, it's gonna become a subject of litigation. We'll get sued
Oh,
by
it
some
is?
employee at some point. And
You
they'll look
will?
at the charter, and they'll decide that they had rights that we were not affording to them, and it will come back to bite us.
Oh, that's why you're here, Joe. Now I get it. All right, so what was your recommendation?
So, as I say, the auditor's note essentially raises two separate issues. One is sort of updating rules and regulations that go to kind of, workplace laws and regulations. And our recommendation is that the town should develop and adopt a sort of handbook that includes updated policies. For example, with respect to things like FMLA, statutory leaves, equal employment, so that the town has in place, a set of guidelines and standards with respect to workplace laws and regulations and the policies that it wants to apply to its employees.
So we
And
should
then-
start that.
Right, and then separately, with respect to, and many of those updates will include language that goes to equal employment, anti-discrimination, and other principles that are inherent in merit. But then there is also the separate piece that the town should make a decision as to whether or not it wants to have a formal, to update its merit system piece in a way that is a formal merit system process, or if it wants to do something that is more flexible, being that a majority of the town employees are now covered by a bargaining unit, one way or another.
I think we need to look to you to come back to us with a recommendation on flexibility and simplicity.
Sure.
Those would be the key elements. Does anybody disagree?
What he said.
Thank you, Courtney.
Well, so we have personnel rules and regulations of the merit system, that was sent to us in a separate PDF file that was in our Dropbox. So, is there a way to take what we currently have and say, this is, all of these items pertain to the personnel rules or policies, and this is what pertains to the merit system, or are they all intertwined?
I would say that a majority of the policies that are in place are an attempt to update in the draft are an attempt to update the merit system, and that it does not necessarily encompass a number of the policies that we would recommend that the town have in order to have up-to-date workplace compliance policies in place.
Okay.
So that would be a little bit separate, and if the town wants to update sort of the merit system piece, it will also be deciding to, whatever you update, you are adopting those policies, and so that merit system piece represents a certain investment of time and resources in having a particular merit-based system in place with entrance exams and promotional exams and that type of procedure.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving on, bid award for bid number 5, 2018-2019, purchase of one 2019 F-450 4x4 crew cab for North Branford Fire Department.
Yeah, the memo there shows that the Tasker Ford is the low bid, and I think I also put out, you should have a letter, the Fire Commission unanimously approved that as well, for the low bid on that truck. A simple motion to approve the low bidder.
I make a motion to award bid number 5, 2018-19 of a 2019 Ford F-450 4x4 crew cab for the North Branford Fire Department to Tasker Ford of Berlin, Connecticut for $50,321.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni.
Yes.
Counselor Diamond.
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin.
Yes.
Counselor Miller.
Yes.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Counselor Viglione.
Yes.
Counselor Zampano.
Yes.
Next item is Board of Education draft RFPQ NBH North Branford High School renovation as new project.
Yeah, I put that in there, that came over from the Board of Ed, but I have since heard from the superintendent that there's no action that the council needs to take. The Board of Education would like to revisit and is going to revisit this RFP/Q for the renovate as new at their next meeting, I believe is on the 17th. So,
Well, I know there's been discussion on the Board of Ed side in regards to this, that they not limit it to just a renovate as new project, and that they also look at building new. And so, I guess my suggestion, one of the things is, I would look to have that as an add alternate in the when I read through this. Of course, there wasn't anything in there, it was just talked about renovate as new. But to have that as, if they were going to do that, as an add alternate in their bid spec. And the other thing is, right now they have $25,000, which is what they asked for in their capital, which we awarded to them. And after reading through all of this, I'm not so sure that $25,000 is going to cover the cost of what is outlined in this RFQ/P. So, it would be the, where's the rest of the money coming from, and would they be willing to, because there's no project schedule in here, they have to fill all those dates in, is getting it out, but it wouldn't start until July 1st, the new fiscal year, so that now that they're working on the budget, they would have time to put in additional funds to request them from the town council to add to the $25,000 so that it can be done properly on there. It would just be something to think about, and they can have that discussion.
Moving on, citizen statements and petitions. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?